For nearly half a century, Voyager 2 has been humanity's farthest ambassador, a fragile machine carrying our voice into the abyss. It has crossed the solar system, outlasted predictions, and even entered interstellar space, where its instruments continue to whisper back faint messages from beyond the sun's reach. But recently, something changed. Without warning, its steady signal began to falter. Then, silence. In an age where even the smallest anomaly is carefully catalogued, the sudden muting of Voyager 2 at the exact moment it crossed paths with the trajectory of 3I Atlas, the crimson interstellar visitor that has already defied the laws of physics, is too precise to dismiss as coincidence. Did the spacecraft encounter interference from the object? Was it silenced deliberately? Or has it stumbled upon something so vast and incomprehensible that even its hardened systems could not survive? What happened in that silence may be the most terrifying discovery yet. Voyager 2 was launched in 1977, a sibling to Voyager 1, both designed as emissaries to explore the outer planets and eventually the interstellar frontier. Against all odds, it has endured cosmic radiation, micrometeoroid strikes, and decades of silence from Earth's sunlit skies. Its plutonium heart still pulses faint warmth into the cold of deep space, keeping alive instruments that measure magnetic fields, charged particles, and faint plasma winds. Until now, every anomaly it reported could be explained, every drop in signal traced to known interference. But in late September, when its trajectory carried it into the extended plasma envelope of 3I Atlas, engineers noticed something different. At first, the data streams became garbled, filled with distortions that looked less like static and more like patterned interference, waves of disruption that repeated with eerie precision. Then, hours later, the signal weakened and fell into silence. No final message, no mechanical failure detected, just the abrupt vanishing of a voice that has spoken for 46 years. To understand the implications, one must look at what 3I Atlas truly is. Discovered as the third known interstellar object, it was first assumed to be another fragment like Oumuamua, an icy shard passing harmlessly through our system. But telescopes soon revealed it was no ordinary body. Its coma swelled until it was nearly half the size of the sun. Its glow shifted into a deep crimson, pulsing with a rhythm too precise to be natural, a heartbeat every 84.6 seconds. Radar studies suggested it absorbed signals at times and reflected them at others, as though manipulating electromagnetic waves at will. For a spacecraft like Voyager 2, traveling through this vast plasma cloud, the risks were enormous. Its antenna, tuned to capture faint signals from billions of miles away, may have become ensnared in a storm of interference far beyond anything engineers could design for. Yet the nature of the disruption, patterned, rhythmic, structured, raises darker questions. Did the object merely overwhelm Voyager's instruments with raw plasma energy, or did it recognize the spacecraft for what it was, a probe carrying humanity's fingerprint into space, and respond accordingly? Though Voyager's main signal has vanished, radio observatories scanning its last known coordinates report something stranger than total quiet. Buried in the static are faint fluctuations, repeating at intervals that match the crimson pulse of 3I Atlas itself. To the untrained ear, it is just noise, but to cryptographers and signal analysts, it looks disturbingly like modulation, as though the spacecraft's transmitter has not stopped entirely, but been hijacked, its faint pulse forced into the rhythm of the visitor. If this is true, then Voyager 2 is no longer sending us data about cosmic rays or plasma winds. It is echoing back the heartbeat of something alien, its voice rewritten to speak in another's language. For mission control, this is both terrifying and profound. It suggests not a failure, but contact. A contact not in the way we imagined, not with greetings or music or mathematics, but with silence, rhythm, and the repurposing of our own technology into a messenger for something we cannot yet decode. If Voyager 2 has indeed been absorbed into the influence of 3I Atlas, then Earth itself is now on notice. The probe was billions of miles away when it fell silent, safely outside our orbit and far beyond the planets. Yet the same forces that hijacked its signal are now sweeping inward, carried by solar winds and coronal mass ejections, rippling toward the inner solar system where our fragile world resides. If a hardened spacecraft, designed to withstand the worst of deep space, can be silenced, then what chance do our satellites, our communications, or even our fragile magnetosphere have when the object's resonance grows stronger? Already, seismographs whisper of rhythms matching its pulse, magnetometers spike with anomalies, and auroras descend where they should not. Voyager may be the first casualty, the first messenger to fall silent, but it will not be the last. For 3I Atlas is not passing by unnoticed. It is interacting, it is choosing, and its gaze has already shifted closer, toward the planet that launched Voyager in the first place. After Voyager 2's abrupt silence, the Deep Space Network continued to scan its last coordinates obsessively, and that persistence paid off. Faint, almost ghost-like signals were detected, not the structured telemetry the spacecraft normally transmits, but low-frequency pulses, too regular to be dismissed as noise. At first, scientists believed these were distortions from the sun's solar wind, but when the intervals were compared, they matched precisely with the crimson heartbeat of 3I Atlas. This raised the chilling possibility that Voyager 2 was no longer a free transmitter, but a mirror, echoing the rhythm of the interstellar object. Even more unsettling, the strength of the pulse appeared to fluctuate depending on which observatory was listening, as though the signal recognized its observer. This wasn't silence. It was something far worse, a hijacking. A machine built to speak for humanity was now speaking for something else, and the words it repeated were not ours. Inside NASA's mission control, panic turned to paralysis. On paper, the spacecraft's systems had not failed. No temperature spikes, no sudden drop in power, no catastrophic hardware fault. Yet the signal they were receiving was no longer their own. Some engineers argued that they should attempt a full reset, blasting commands across billions of miles in the hope of forcing Voyager 2 back into compliance. Others warned that any command might only deepen the problem, feeding the very interference that had rewritten its voice. What if Voyager was no longer in control of its own transmitter? What if the commands themselves were intercepted, studied, and answered not by the probe, but by 3I Atlas? The debate split the team, but one truth united them. Never before had a spacecraft gone silent this way. Voyagers had survived micrometeoroids, cosmic rays, and the cold of interstellar space, but they had never crossed paths with something that seemed to think. As word leaked of Voyager's silence, independent researchers began to speculate that this was not mere interference but intention. The idea of an interstellar object acting deliberately is terrifying, but the evidence was mounting. First, the red glow of 3I Atlas shifted too abruptly to be explained by chemistry alone. Then came its impossible resistance to Mars's gravitational tug. And now, Voyager 2, humanity's most distant voice, had fallen silent the instant it entered its plasma envelope. Was this an accident of physics, or was the probe deliberately silenced? Some theorists argued that Voyager's golden record, its message of human culture and music, may have acted as a beacon, alerting the object to its artificial nature. If true, then 3I Atlas did not just encounter Voyager by chance. It recognized it. And in recognizing it, it may have decided that silence was preferable to conversation. For now, all Earth can do is watch. Radio telescopes strain for every fragment of data, decoding faint whispers in the noise, hoping to catch a glimpse of Voyager's true signal hidden beneath the interference. But the longer the silence continues, the clearer the reality becomes. Voyager 2 may no longer belong to us. If its transmitter has been bent into alignment with 3I Atlas's rhythm, then the probe is no longer ours to command. It has been repurposed, turned into a node in a network we do not understand. And if an interstellar object has the ability to do this at billions of miles away, then distance is no defense. Earth's satellites, its communication systems, even its defenses orbiting just above the atmosphere, all may be vulnerable to the same influence. Voyager's silence may not be the end of its mission. It may be the warning that humanity itself is about to step into the same shadow. As Voyager 2's voice faded, Earth itself began to whisper. Seismographs across the planet picked up strange microtremors, subtle but repeating, echoing every 84 seconds. The same rhythm observed in the crimson pulse of 3I Atlas, and disturbingly, in the ghost signals now attributed to Voyager. At first, scientists dismissed the correlation as coincidence, but when instruments in Chile, Japan, and Iceland all reported the same pulse at the same interval, skepticism gave way to dread. It was as if the planet had been pulled into resonance, its crust vibrating faintly in sympathy with a cosmic rhythm transmitted across billions of miles. If a machine built by humans could be hijacked into silence, what happens when Earth itself, a far more delicate system, falls deeper into the same rhythm? The Venezuelan quakes may not have been isolated events, but the first manifestations of a resonance that is only beginning to take hold. High above the atmosphere, Earth's magnetic shield began to show similar signs of disturbance. Magnetometers in multiple observatories recorded abrupt jolts of energy, not the smooth waves of ordinary geomagnetic storms, but sharp spikes that repeated in intervals suspiciously close to 3I Atlas's pulse. Auroras bled into skies thousands of miles from their normal boundaries, lighting up regions unaccustomed to such displays. Airline pilots reported strange compass drift, navigation errors that appeared and disappeared in rhythm, while satellites temporarily lost orientation as though tugged by unseen hands. None of these disturbances coincided with direct solar flares aimed at Earth, leading some to speculate that the influence wasn't coming from the sun at all, but through the comet's enormous plasma envelope, a web of charged particles stretching through the solar system, feeding disturbances directly into Earth's protective shield. If Voyager 2 was the first to fall silent under this influence, Earth's magnetosphere may be next, leaving the planet exposed to storms it was never meant to face. As attention turned to Earth's anomalies, Mars offered a chilling confirmation that this was not imagination. Orbiters circling the red planet captured unexpected auroras sweeping across its skies, brighter and more widespread than any interaction with the solar wind could justify. Even more startling were seismic readings from instruments left by the InSight lander, which reported Marsquakes that appeared to coincide with 3I Atlas's pulsing glow. A barren world with no oceans, no global magnetic shield, no tectonic activity to amplify its restlessness, was trembling under the same rhythm that silenced Voyager. To planetary scientists, this was a revelation and a warning. The resonance was not confined to Earth. It was systemic, stretching across planets, binding worlds into the same cosmic beat. If Mars could tremble in sympathy with a visitor millions of miles away, then Earth, far more complex and fragile, might only be experiencing the beginning of a far greater chain reaction. With Voyager silent and both Earth and Mars trembling, theories began to multiply, each more disturbing than the last. Some argued that 3I Atlas was not a comet at all, but a probe, a machine designed to test the systems of any star it entered, silencing or hijacking the technology it encountered. Others proposed that it was less a machine and more a living entity, feeding on plasma and resonance, using its vast coma as a sensory organ to probe planets and spacecraft alike. But the most chilling theory of all was whispered in classified briefings, that Voyager had not simply gone silent but had been repurposed, its golden record and instruments now tools for something else. If true, then humanity's most distant ambassador has been transformed into a transmitter for an intelligence we do not understand, and the silence is not absence but conversation, one that Earth is not privy to. When news of Voyager 2's silence spread, attention turned inevitably to the artifact it carries, the golden record. That disk of copper, etched with sounds and images of Earth, was designed as a message to any intelligence that might one day discover the probe. But what if that message has already been intercepted? If 3I Atlas is more than rock and ice, if it truly possesses the ability to manipulate electromagnetic fields, then perhaps the first thing it detected was not Voyager's faint signal but the encoded greeting of our species. In that scenario, silence was never the end of communication. It was the beginning. Imagine the golden record no longer floating as a passive relic but being actively studied, decrypted, and possibly rewritten. Some theorists suggest that the faint pulses now echoing back from Voyager's position could contain fragments of our own message, twisted, reassembled, and sent back as something unrecognizable. Humanity's greeting to the stars may have become the raw material for a reply delivered not in words but in silence and resonance. As cryptographers analyzed the ghostly signals attributed to Voyager, a new and terrifying possibility arose. What if Voyager is not the only node in play? Observatories in Australia and Chile reported that the faint echoes were not fixed to one source, but seemed to shift subtly in origin, sometimes arriving milliseconds earlier than expected, as though bouncing through points in space we cannot see. This raised the hypothesis that 3I Atlas is not a solitary object, but part of a larger network, a web of resonant nodes stretching invisibly across the solar system. Voyager's silence may represent not just a hijacking, but an integration, the moment a human machine was folded into an alien system. If this is true, then every pulse, every fluctuation, is not random interference, but a test of connectivity, a calibration of a network that spans stars. And Earth, with its satellites, its power grids, and its ceaseless signals, may be the next system invited, or forced, to join. Even before official confirmation, the psychological effects of Voyager's silence rippled through those who followed its story. Engineers reported unsettling dreams of vast crimson skies, symbols they could not decipher, and mechanical voices that pulsed in rhythm with the heartbeat of 3I Atlas. Amateur astronomers, staring too long at the object's glow, described a sense of being watched, as if the comet's light carried an intelligence that pressed into their thoughts. Neurologists who studied brainwave patterns among volunteers exposed to recordings of the ghost signal found faint synchronization between human neural rhythms and the pulse. To some, it was dismissed as coincidence or suggestion. But to others, it felt like the first stage of something far more invasive, a creeping influence that begins with machines and data, then seeps into minds, reshaping thought not with words, but with resonance. Voyager's silence may not be the only message. The real message might already be inside us. As the anomalies piled higher, the official response grew quieter. NASA released a carefully worded statement describing temporary communication difficulties with Voyager 2, a phrase that avoided mentioning the timing with 3I Atlas entirely. ESA reports spoke vaguely of deep space interference. Meanwhile, insiders whispered that data had been pulled from public archives, that full-spectrum readings of the ghost signal had been classified, and that private observatories were being pressured to withhold their findings. This silence felt less like ignorance and more like fear. Fear of admitting that humanity's most distant voice had not simply gone quiet, but had been absorbed by something far beyond our control. And as agencies fell silent, the Crimson Visitor continued to pulse. Voyager remained mute, and Earth was left to wonder if its own turn was next. For the first time in history, our species may not be the one listening to the cosmos, but the one being studied in return. As the world's most powerful radio telescopes kept listening, an even stranger discovery emerged. Signals resembling Voyager's carrier wave were detected not only from its last known position, but from entirely different regions of space, faint reflections arriving milliseconds apart, as though the same transmission was being echoed by multiple invisible points. This made no sense. Voyager 2 is a single spacecraft with a single transmitter, its antenna locked firmly toward Earth. Yet here were ghost signals, spread across the sky like fragments of a broken mirror, all pulsing in synchrony with 3I Atlas. To some, this suggested that the spacecraft's signal was being bent, scattered by gravitational or electromagnetic anomalies. But others whispered a far more chilling theory, that Voyager itself had been duplicated, not physically but informationally, its signal replicated and inserted into a wider network. If so, then what we are hearing now is not the voice of a single probe, but a chorus. Voyager multiplied into something unrecognizable, its identity spread across a structure we cannot see, serving purposes we cannot comprehend. Inside the hidden chambers of Project Icarus, the classified task force overseeing anomalous space phenomena, analysts debated what the silence of Voyager truly meant. Was it the end of its mission, a graceful death after decades of loyal service, or was it the first move in something far more deliberate? The most disturbing reports suggested that 3I Atlas's pulse was growing stronger, bleeding not only into seismographs and magnetometers, but into communication bands used by satellites orbiting Earth. Subtle distortions, repeating at the same intervals, were now being recorded closer to home. If the influence that hijacked Voyager has already begun to seep into Earth's technological web, then Voyager 2 may not be the last machine to fall silent. It may be the first warning. For now, the Crimson Visitor waits at a distance, pulsing, resonating, rewriting the voice of humanity's farthest emissary. But if its influence continues to grow, the silence that claimed Voyager may soon extend to Earth itself. And when that happens, we will no longer wonder if contact has been made. We will know it, not in words, but in the disappearance of our own voice from the cosmos. Voyager 2 was never meant to last this long. It was built to explore the outer planets, to carry humanity's voice into the dark, and to fade quietly into interstellar silence. But instead, its ending has become something stranger, something that feels less like death and more like transformation. It did not go silent after its power failed, or after its systems froze in the void. It went silent after stepping into the path of 3I Atlas, the crimson interstellar visitor whose pulse has already bent physics, shaken planets, and whispered into the very rhythms of Earth itself. What we are left with is not absence, but resonance. Voyager's faint signal has not disappeared entirely. It has been rewritten, bent into harmony with 3I Atlas's heartbeat, repeating rhythms that no longer belong to us. In that sense, Voyager has not died. It has been claimed, and the silence we hear is not empty. It is filled with meaning we cannot yet decipher, a message written in the language of resonance, one that may not be meant for us at all. And if a spacecraft, hardened against the extremes of the cosmos, can be absorbed into this rhythm, what of Earth? Already our seismographs echo the same intervals, our magnetosphere jolts in sympathy, and our satellites record distortions at the edges of their communication bands. Perhaps Voyager was not the first casualty, but the first warning, a demonstration of what happens when human voices meet something older, larger, and incomprehensibly more powerful. So the real question is no longer why Voyager went silent. The real question is why it was silenced now, and what will happen when Earth itself, the planet that sent Voyager into the stars, begins to hum in the same rhythm. Silence, after all, is not the absence of communication. Sometimes, it is the loudest message of all.